Welcome back to Bunker Basics, where we answer completely fake questions from the AI, but pretend they're real for the sake of content. None of this medical, dental, vision, legal, financial, veterinary, or any advice about anything. Do your research, dummies! Oh, look, an abandoned bunker. Let's go! This mine! Bunker! Whee! Okay, now time for the host, Chance Paladin.
This one's kind of an experiment. I was watching Vision's chat and someone had a question that I really liked, and so I wanted to dig in. It is kind of the top 10, like, I'm coming over to your house when SHTF. So here we go. Hey, all you rural preppers, homestead hosts, and community-minded survivalists, I'm a total prepper newbie living in a rural spot with some land, water, and basics. Prepped, and I'm moderately open to the idea of trusted friends or family bugging out to my place if things get bad. But I'm worried about awkward talks, mismatched expectations, or regretting it later. Help me figure out the key conversations to have up front so everyone's on the same page. Hooray! Question 1. I have situation. A close friend just hinted that they would quote-unquote head my way if SHTF, assuming I'd welcome them without details. What's the first gentle but firm conversation I should have to clarify if bugging out to my place is even an option? Welcome but wary Walt. I think this is interesting, like, actually having a humane conversation up front. Usually I take the perspective of a consultant and say, if you actually care about the person, and say, does it even make sense? Like, let's, try to gauge how serious of a conversation they're having and consider getting out a map and say, how do you plan on, getting here? Your kids are going to be at school. Where do you work? Where's your wife at? Like, how do you all plan kind of on rallying together, and kind of what's that time frame look like? And you might look at a map and they might go, oh, never mind, you're right. And then you're like, well, if you're gonna bug out, if you're gonna bug out somewhere else, maybe I can help you with those logistics if you've never thought about that stuff before. Try to figure out at the very initial onset. I used to just kind of say snarky, mean stuff, depending on who was asking. But like, if they're a sincere, they're a close friend, so you're assuming that they're sincere, they're concerned, they're worried. They've got a wife and kids and dog and goldfish, which I think some of these other questions get into. assuming they're sincere, I usually put on the hat of a consultant, and I'm worried a little bit less about the fact that they're showing up to my house, and actually considerably more worried about if they can even make it, because it's going to be very treacherous, figuring out where their kind of tripwires are to make sure they actually get out on time. So that's probably the first gentle but firm conversation, is to figure out how, if they have 3 routes to get there, then start trying to figure out radios and stuff. And I think more of these questions get into the rest of it. So I think, again, this one's kind of an experiment. Question 2. I have situation. I'm okay with a couple people joining me, but not an unlimited group with kids, pets, and extended family. How do I ask about exactly who would be coming without sounding cold or unwelcoming? Usually how I have this question is, instead of asking them, how many little bastards are you bringing, and how, you're bringing your giant dog and you'd need 55-gallon drums of dog food, per week. Usually I ask it kind of the opposite and say, how much food and dietary concerns, and then you can usually get them to list out family members if you're trying to figure out dietary concerns. And then I kind of take it from a point of like, let's collaborate on what the meal plans would look like. Again, assuming that this is a close friend with sincere concerns. And then I say, okay, if you just show up with absolutely nothing, I have a little bit of food, but not a ton. And you might go, why would you give them any food? Usually, like, as a prepper that's going to be accepting in refugees, you have your own food for your family, and then you have like the community food box. And then as people come and go, you try to cycle through your community food box, so at least you have something. And then as you get that meal plan going, you can tell them like, okay, well, are you just planning on staying here overnight until you go up to grandma's house? So you just need 3 hots and a cot? Or is this going to be, your last stand? Because you got to think about an extra sets of tools and the defensive situation. Or if someone's in a wheelchair and you don't have ramps and stuff. So that's how, do we need a ramp for grandma? You see what you can ask a lot of that stuff without coming off as adversarial. And how we used to do it is like, hey, I'm going to the grocery store. I can pick up some extra canned food for y'all. If you toss in a couple bucks, like, could you tell me what kind of canned food your kids like? Does that make sense? Like, you can start to figure that out. Head count hesitant Hannah. And then what'll happen is, if they say something like, well, there's a chance that my crazy Uncle Harold would come out too, because crazy Uncle Harold might be moving in. And you go, okay, well, are you calling him crazy Uncle Harold because he was in Vietnam, or because he escaped from the asylum? And then you can kind of work your way out from there. But start like a little matrix. That's what I would do. And then hopefully more of these questions get into it, but then you start thinking about like radios for each one of them, and call signs and things, and cross-training and family outings later on. All right, question 3. I have situation. I've got some preps, but adding people means sharing food, water, and space I've worked hard for. What's a fair way to discuss contributions, bringing their own supplies, or helping with chores, early on? Fair share, Frank. I think there's a couple ways of doing it. I would have people pay up front. I would have people be, if they're again sincerely planning on bugging out to your house, then they should not have any problem whatsoever acting almost as if they're like an invisible roommate. That means like helping with bills, or like renting space, and then kind of keeping like a ledger showing that you've like bought in to a piece of their property. If that means renting a tote, worth of space, or renting a couple totes worth of space, that's how I've seen it done before. Or like if you're going in a little extra, like renting a part of a shipping container, or like even a whole shipping container in some cases, things like that. If they are serious about it, like if they're legitimately worried, that is not even remotely a big deal. If anything, it's more like an obvious no duh sort of a conversation. Like when someone's planning on bugging out to your house, they're renting a piece of your property, they just don't know it yet. A lot of people just haven't thought that far. And likewise, if you're the people trying to find, I should actually probably be reversing a bunch of these, which is kind of what I was thinking about. So I'm glad my brain is catching up to reality here. If you have to flip this around the other way, because I've been on both ends of the spectrum on this, if someone's making up excuses why you can't even put a single tote at their house, not even one single tote, you can't even stop by and drop one off for 5 minutes, and you ask 3 to 5 times and it is nothing but excuses, and their communication is terrible, that's like all you need to know to just move on. Not only can you not trust that person as a bug out spot, but you can't even trust that person as a friend if they can't even handle basic communication. So yeah, I've had both sides of that. And the thing is too, from the other side of that, I had kind of a hard time arbitrarily transacting money with a friend over and over, and I still have a problem with it. But in the prepper community, you're kind of like symbolically sending the exact same money over to each other over and over and over again, and nobody's ever really making any money, as sort of just like a formal show of appreciation and commitment to, I don't know, commitment, I guess. It's like symbolic commitment, and I don't do as nearly good of a job as I should be doing on both ends. Like, I guess what I would call handing the $20 bill back and forth over and over and over again, because it took me a long time to kind of catch up on that, to just like keep a 20 with you. So if someone does something for you, you can give them the 20, and kind of when you do something for them, you kind of get the 20 back. Because some people are like, have a little bit more money sometimes, and they want to kick you a little bit more money, and then the next time you kind of kick them a little bit of money for something. That way, if someone ever actually has to actually buy something, it doesn't feel like it's eating them. Yeah. Again, shout outs to some of you listening. I know I don't do as good of a job on that. I wish I did a better job. I also turn money down all the time because my brain is just not in that mindset. And I forget to give people money too when they've actually put money into stuff. I try to make it right, but that's one of those things that takes a while to get right all the time. It's kind of like a laissez-faire, kind of a libertarian kind of a thing, I guess. Sometimes I do way better at it than others. Question 4. I have situation. I worry about skills mismatch, ... One person might be great at gardening, another clueless. How do I ask what useful skills or experience they'd bring to a rural bug out without making it an interview? Skill check Sally. I think it depends on how much you care about the person and how much they've put into it. If they're buying their way in, they are kind of like buying a lot of those questions away, if that makes sense. But also, if you're good enough friends with them, you should know if like one of them does welding stuff and the gal works as a nurse, because let's face it, lots and lots and lots of gals, like if you go to the doctor, if you go to the hospital, like all the nurses are gals. So if there's some guy that just hangs out at the hospital until he's dated all the nurses and chosen the nurse that he likes the most, you know, maybe she's going to be a nurse. But I mean, there's also gals that have worked at NASA and they could end up being like rocket scientists. I mean, you never know. And that's kind of the wild thing, is like, not every skill is like directly transferable to SHTF, but I would rather have a gal around that's good at herding all the little bastards, because that's going to be a huge problem. But if there's a bunch of nanas running around, they can herd the little bastards, so the gals don't get burnt out with those little shits all day. I think, which is something that really went by the wayside during the Rona, is, you know, a bunch of boomers just decided to just screw their kids and say you're on your own with the grandkids. I knew so many families that happened to. And so I'm not as super worried about transferable skills anymore as I used to be when it comes to close friends, because all of my close friends already absolutely work their asses off. Like, I don't have anybody in my circle, nor have I in my circle for a long time, have had anybody who's a deadbeat or who would be dating or married to a deadbeat. Now, depending on how old their kids are and what their kids are interested in is kind of a whole other deal. But I assume, you know, if they were in their mid to late teens or something, they would just be job shadowing somebody else until they picked something up, if that makes sense. Because there's a lot of dumb little things that we don't get to do just in general on homesteads that end up being important if you had enough people to do them, like actually properly fertilizing all your dirt is when I always bring up, or like the constant repairing of the fence, things like that, like actually pruning the trees, right? There's things like that, you know, someone could job shadow and then pick up. So it's just going to be a matter of like the psychological resilience of if they're just going to shut down and be a freak, like freaking out all the time. Because, you know, their normalcy bias has been shattered and they want to go into the city even though the city is a crater. Which is like what happens now. I mean, you watch the news and that's what it's like now. Like the cities are basically gone. I mean, they're there, but like the cities are... The last time I went, it was like garbage on top of garbage. Like they didn't clean up the garbage in between the next homeless. Like I've never seen it that bad before. It's usually garbage or homeless. It's usually not, or it's the homeless and the current garbage. It's not like the homeless and then the garbage from the last homeless are still there. And that normalcy, like you need people that psychologically can compartmentalize and are ready for not just a rural experience, but the fact that everything is a much slower pace. Anyway, you can still go to the store every day, but you're just going down to the town. Anyway, that's all about skills mismatch, like gardening and stuff. Like there's just a billion things to do, like teaching, you know, you can job shadow, the kids could job shadow how to safely collect and store the seeds for the next year, or like actually going through and making sure they get all the potatoes, which is something that I was not good at this year. Keeping all the fencing around that. Yeah, there is a million things. So you don't have to make it an interview, just like make it like a discussion. Figure out where everyone's at psychologically, and you do that by listening for cues. Like they like to go into this city to go to the theater over and over again, and you're like, oh god, here we go again. They got to go to the special boutique bookstore in the middle of a crime infested hellhole where people are just getting murdered left and right, where there's organized crime. You know, you got to figure out what that normalcy bias is, figure out where their head's at. And some of that is like, well, were you guys thinking about buying a house out here anyway? Oh yeah. And like maybe they don't bug out at your house because maybe they just, oh, there's a couple houses for sale. I don't know. And yeah, there's a lot of different ways of doing it. Skill check Sally. Yeah, what we used to do is just make skill matrices and stuff, but like anymore, the likelihood of you finding a doctor anymore, especially in a small town, is like almost zero. The doctors coming in now are coming in from other areas, working in your doctor's office, and then going back to their own area. Even with all these new hundreds and hundreds of houses in each of these 3, 4, 5, 6 subdivisions, I don't think a single one of them is a doctor. So you might be lucky with a nurse or veterinarian. But our town only has one veterinarian, period. Like, so the likelihood of you dating or marrying, or your friend dating or marrying a surgeon or a doctor or a veterinarian is like, people, I don't know what it is. People just aren't going to school for a lot of that anymore. You might get a pharmacist. You're actually probably statistically way more likely to get a pharmacist. So anyway, I'm rambling. Question 5. I have situation. My rural setup has rules like quiet hours, no drugs, and everyone pitches in. When and how should I lay out my house rules and expectations for behavior during a stay? Usually, I guess this is as good of a time as any to have this part of the discussion. You know, you can have a job board and things like that, but honestly, for every family that moves in, even though it's not going to be a democracy, it's more going to be like a council, and that whole household has to nominate one council member, leader person, and that person, you know, by his whole tribe staying here, there's going to have to be rules, because especially with like sleep, because when people are sleep deprived, they just go insane. And so there's going to have to be like sacred hours where everyone's quiet. Now, of course, like, things are going to go wrong, and people are going to overreact, and there's going to be all kinds of problems as nerves get frayed. But sometimes people acting on emotion, even though it seems kind of crazy, sometimes it works out for the best. Like, we have emotions for a reason. It's kind of like, they're kind of like pressure valves in a lot of ways, but you can try to avoid all of that by having the spokesperson, the council person, whatever, be responsible for their little tribe of monsters. But the problem is like, not only do women constantly nitpick each other to death over everything, over this perceived hierarchy that doesn't exist outside of their brains, but kids are going to blame each other for crap too. And so you're going to have all these different ways of settling like minor disputes and burying them so they don't fester forever. That's also like back in the camping episode, I was talking about like the gals, the girls, the gals, the daughters, the wives, girlfriends, having their own spot, just to like cut down on a lot of that, give them their own space and cut down on a lot of that. Now, they might all create a secret council of Amazon women and throw out all the men, but that's something you're just going to have to deal with. I think like each of the tribes having their own spaces, the genders having their own spaces, giving everybody space to go and cool off and vent and feel safe. And that, I think kind of one of my big aha moments was one of the Atlas videos where some very rich people had ordered 2 bunkers and then had the bunkers kind of merged at the entrance. And so it was the gal's side of the bunker and the guy's side of the bunker. And I thought that was awesome. So what that might look like on a homestead, is certain people having a part of the house and a certain people having a part of the house until you can do shipping containers, or if you have like heavy duty, canvas tents or, carports, things like that, starting to make people their own areas. So kids aren't playing in the workshop and people aren't trying to talk while people are trying to cook and get ingredients right and stuff, and processing meat and getting hurt. So that's how I would do it. Kind of a double, the job board plus having, council leaders, like non-voting council members, stuff. I have situation, question 6. Bugging out could last days, weeks, or longer, and I don't want permanent guests. How do I talk about time limits or exit plans up front without killing the conversation? Temporary host, Tim. I hate to say it, but you kind of don't get to decide that. If it's, you think you want to, but you can't. Like, I learned this during the Rona. 2 weeks to flatten the curve, or 3 or 4, 6 weeks to flatten the curve, 8, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years to flatten the curve. You can have like the best intentions in the world, and you don't know how long it's going to last. I think we planned on spending 2 years with our roommates when we lost our house, so we didn't burn the friendship too bad. And it ended up being over 5 years. And in a lot of ways, that was kind of like a bug out situation, really. I mean, we lost our house during the second Obama crash. That strained everybody to the end of the widths of their limits. And I don't think we'd ever like formally agreed on 2 years, but I think deep down, I think everybody knew. But then the Rona hit, and it was just like, okay, do we pay, triple for rent somewhere, quadruple for rent somewhere? We had a bankruptcy, and like so we couldn't quite get a home loan yet, even though houses had doubled. It was still a really good price, and the interest rates hadn't really gone up yet. So stupid. I was like, but I don't think we could have done it because the bankruptcy wasn't like, some places we couldn't even open a bank account. It's like, man, the bankruptcy is like 5 years ago. Calm yourselves. We were treated like, subhuman degenerate. Meanwhile, there's like illegals getting, $30,000 to go buy a house when they can't even verify who they are. But, I mean, nobody wants to hear me tell all those stories again. I think the problem is like, when you talk to somebody about this, really all you can do is say, are you spending the night here because we're like a hop along the trail? Or is this the end of the line for you? And a lot of people go like, listen, I'm in a super tiny house. There's no garden here. There's no yard. This is going to have to be a hop along the trail. And then tell them, like, it's nothing personal, but, you're going to be bugging out too. And then you might want to share with them where you're bugging out to, so you can both start staging things at the next spot, but you might not. It is going to kill the conversation, though, if you don't set expectations properly. Temporary host Tim. But I would say if you only want them to stay there for a day, chances are you're only going to be staying there for a day too. People can really, really overstay their welcomes, even, ruining campers and ruining RVs and stuff. But that's why you get your money's worth out of them while they're there, and work on the compensation as you go, and set expectations for compensations, like we were talking, contributions and stuff like we were talking about earlier, and make sure it's things that you actually need, that are gonna actually keep things right between everybody. All right. Question 7. I have situation. I'm concerned about weapons, .. Some friends are armed, others aren't, and mixing that could be tense. What's a smart way to discuss firearms, security roles, and ammo sharing before anyone arrives? Armed and cautious Carl. That's tough. So, sometimes, if you have really good friends that you really trust, and also this is part of the conversation, is ask how secure parts of their house are for you to be able to stash defensive tools and ammo. Stashing ammo is not a big deal at all. If you're poor, it seems like a big deal. If you're not poor, you're actually just kind of used to it, because ammo weighs a ton. And you don't want to bug out with your ammo. It just weighs too much. Unless you're bugging out with 22. Then I guess, go on with your bad self carrying 2,000 rounds of 22 in your belt-fed... I'm joking. There's no belt-fed... Oh, no, didn't someone make a belt-fed 22 Gatling gun? Anyway. Short of carrying around 22, you're not carrying around very much ammo. Not enough to bug out with. Enough for like one firefight, if you're lucky. So you've got to have your ammo staged and cached. That's not a big deal. What is a big deal is people caching modern firearms. Not only does that take a massive level of trust, but if it's in their main safe and they're not there and you're there, you're not going to be getting it out. So you have to have it in something that you can get to, but not them. So some kind of lockbox or something, and something that's hidden that they don't tell anybody about. And nobody knows what's in it, but they're not going to easily get in it. It's like a footlocker, like those old military footlockers. I love those. Those are a good example. A lot of people will put them in a gun case, but rifle cases, everybody knows what a rifle case is. So you can have it broken down so it's in some kind of different shape. And then if the little kiddos get into it, it's not the end of the world. And then if somebody takes it, I don't know, you could keep the lower in a different spot. I don't know, keep it disguised as other stuff, or secret compartments in your, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. To where that SBR, or whatever it is. So you have something, and they should be doing the same thing, because you need a rifle per person. So that is very contentious. And when I was trying to figure that out in P&W Affliction, like I was trying to figure out like, what's that look like? Because if you have a subdivision full of people and you're all going to try to hold the subdivision together, you're going to have some people with modern tools. You're going to have some people with like hunting tools and FUD tools and revolvers and pumps and double barrel. You're going to have a smattering of everything. And you're going to have people with bows and crossbows and slingshots and machetes and hockey stick. Like, you're going to have it all. And so it's letting everybody know kind of like, okay, so you've got a pump shotgun. So let's see if we can get you some like rifled slugs or something. And then if you can find a bunch of bird shot, getting them to train with it, but understanding that, bird shot's not going to stop the hordes. It's just not going to, even pierce people at a certain range. Whereas like buckshot, you can skip buckshot off concrete and potentially keep a lot of people at bay. If you needed to buy time while someone rings the bell and calls the troops. If you're trying to hold like a subdivision, like a double barrel might be good for trying to shoo a drone away, for example. But like stopping a horde, it might be, firing 2 blasts in the air, and everyone knows what 2 blasts means. Would it be nice if everyone was running around with ARs and AKs? Yeah, and I thought one of these questions gets to that. But like, the reality is people are going to have Mini 14s and M1As and 30-06 bolt guns and all kinds of stuff. So it's being able to figure out where best to put everybody, and making sure people don't turn into elitist assholes, and probably cross-training everyone on everything too. Armed and cautious Carl. And I know people want to like get everyone on the same pattern and the same caliber and the same mags, but that's just simply not possible. You're going to get what you get. Question 8. I have situation. Health issues or medications can become big problems off-grid with no quick doctor access. How do I sensitively ask about medical needs, prescriptions, or conditions they might have? Health check Helen. Kind of talked about that already, just when you're asking about food allergies. Ask about other stuff too, like ask if anyone has sensitive tummies, talking about like Pepto on like the camping one. There's also like pills that help people break down, dairy better. So you can say, is anyone like lactose intolerant? Start to figure those things out. There's very, what's the word I'm looking for? There's sensitive ways that you can ask all that stuff and be conscientious and empathetic. And like peanut allergies is a big one. Fish allergies is a big one. A lot of people are allergic to like shellfish or peanuts, and keep an extra Benadryl around. And do we need to keep more EpiPen? Like, does anyone have like type 1 diabetes? Like, we have off-grid fridges, blah, blah, blah. I can't think of the right word. There's ways to talk about that though, where it'll be just fine. And also the fact that, you've got a pharmacy nearby, so you might still be able to, switch pharmacies or whatever in an extended grid down. All right, question 9. I have situation. Vehicles breaking down or running out of fuel on the way here could strand them or draw attention. Should I talk about their bug out route, vehicle readiness, and backup plans? Oh, route planning, Bob. I kind of hit on that already, but vehicle readiness is kind of a part of that, because like we've had the floods here. There could be roads washed out. And then there's the mudslides. Like, they need to have the 4-wheel drive, and they need to have the fuel, keeping their fuel topped off, and checking on their tire pressure if they have a newer vehicle with those stupid tire pressure gauge things. Knowing what to bring and knowing what they don't need to bring, clothes, boots, like just throw all the boots in the truck. Every pair of boots you've got, every pair of socks you've got, unless they staged a bunch of socks at your house. Because the problem is like, okay, they might have staged a bunch of boots at your house, but those boots were from last year, and all the kids have outgrown all the boots. I know I harp on that a lot, but like boots are what's going to make or break this whole thing. During the Rona, like you couldn't buy a pair of boots, and you couldn't buy clothes for years, unless you went to the secondhand stores. But yeah, they need to keep a fuel can. They need to keep the fuel cycled. They need to keep their vehicle full. They need to have at least 3 routes. And they need to have, the GPS and the maps and all that in case there's roadblocks and stuff. That way they don't have to get out. You don't, during shit is the fan, you don't want to stop at the gas stations. You don't want to try to make like that final stop at the grocery store. Like, you want to get out. Use all that time that everyone else is doing all that to just go on by. Like, there's been times where, even now, which we're only kind of mildly in SHTF, where I've taken a look at the gas station and I'm like, nah, this doesn't feel right. Thankfully, I've got enough gas. Because you don't want to have to check a bunch of gas stations and run out of gas. Also, as we get closer, the debit machine can be out at the gas station, which happens already a lot. The gas station could be empty. The machines just might not be working. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Question 10. I have situation. I don't want surprises. If things calm down, I need to know they'll leave. If not, we need a plan B. How do I bring up what if this doesn't work out scenarios without sounding like I don't trust them? Exit strategy, Emma. You might not be able to let them go. You might not, in doing that, you might be sentencing them to death or traffic or, slavery. Not to mention they could be giving up your position, and if they get tortured, you're sentencing those people to death. So you have to be able to come to terms with, are you just irritated because they're grating on your nerves? You need to separate yourself from the emotions of, maybe they brought their kitten, and their kitten is just playing with the toy while you're trying to sleep, which happened to me last night. The cat was playing with her toy in the bedroom, and I just laid there and listened to the cat playing with the toy till I fell asleep. That's the difference between sleep deprivation and, tolerance and just kind of being one with the universe. But as nerves fray, people get more and more upset. But if everything's okay, everything might be okay to you, but everything might not be okay to them. Their house might be gone. Their job might not exist anymore. The man of the family and his brother might take a couple rifles and leave the kids and the wife with you while they go check on things and bring a radio and a camera or a phone or something to take some pictures, and they might barely make it back and go, things aren't good. there's no home to go back to, or there's no city to go back to, or there's no subdivision to go back to, or they have squatters in their house. And you know, you've got to be objective about what okay means. And I know roommates are like the hardest thing in the world, and I used to swear up and down we would never have roommates and we would never do roommates. And everybody has to sacrifice, and it's really hard. It's the hardest thing in the world to like give up your peace to kind of host another family. And I know they can ruin everything and be turds, but yeah, it's tough. Yeah, I mean, thinking about question 10 again, a lot of people aren't going to have backup plans. Like, you're going to be it. Like, a lot of bug out is like all or nothing. By the time they're asking you, it's usually they have no options. That's exactly what I ran into with us. Like, I had all these friends and all these prior coworkers, and not a single one of them would like take us in. Million excuses. Don't want to upset, their family and this and that, and their wife, this and that. And some of it was like kind of valid, especially if they already had like a ton of people in the house. But some of it's like, okay, so you have a spare room, but you just can't be bothered to move your stuff or whatever, or clean it up a little bit. And a lot of them just didn't want to upset their wives. I think that was probably the number one thing I heard. And I kept telling people, like, how do you think it's gonna go when shit hits the fan? Like, and some of them had RVs and stuff, so it wasn't a big deal, but most of them didn't. And it was really weird, I think. And what I noticed kind of at the end of the Rona SHTF is that a lot of people kind of didn't ask permission. They sort of just showed up and then forced a reaction, and in kind of a weird way, that's not 100% of what we did, but like our first plan fell through. We had pre-booked and everything, one of those long stay hotels that was designed and priced and set up with the kitchen and everything. If you're gonna like say stay somewhere and work for a while, it's kind of like a live-in hotel sort of a thing. But our credit was ruined from the bankruptcy, and some money hadn't transferred into our account yet and stuff, and so they kind of just wouldn't even let us move into our room. And then we had our cats in the car and everything, and then I just kind of went to my friend's house and said, hey, I know we can't move in because you said we can't move in right now, but can we at least put our cats are in a kennel, can we at least like have the cats in your garage? And kind of just showing up, but we had also just helped them move. They had just helped us move out of our house that we lost. So I don't want to say like that they owed us, but we had already worked together on like a million projects, as it were. So like just showing up wasn't going to get a shotgun in my face. So you have to know, kind of like, those are kind of the two questions. It's like, okay, we can't plan this because your wife is going to have a cow, fine, or you guys are on the rocks or whatever. But like, if I show up, are you going to shove a gun in my face? and then kind of working your way out from there. Because that's what happened with one of my friends. Like, their house had gotten not just like burglarized, but like multiple home invasions. His truck had got stolen. His other truck had just got completely, like, everything taken from it. Like, he had no work tools left. They had taken everything from him, and then they started home invading his house. And they weren't keeping the guys in prison that were doing it to even their hearings. Like, it was a very bad situation. And this other guy that was like, oh, no, my wife wouldn't like it. Well, he kind of just showed up one day with his family, and it ended up being as okay as it could have been. But again, he also had like a lot of skills that helped out. So yeah, anyway, that's a whole deal. You might not just be able to get them to leave. There might not be anywhere to go back to, but eventually he was able to get somewhere again, and I was able to get somewhere again. And you'll see that they're putting in an effort for another plan, or you'll see if they're planning on hunkering down forever, so you can figure out which way to go. Yeah, so let's see what we have for the bonus question. I have situation. So many preppers treat bug out hosting like it's either open door to everyone forever or lone wolf trust me. Lone wolf trust no one. But I'm trying to find a balanced middle ground with real people I care about. Is the biggest myth that letting anyone bug out with you will always end in disaster or drama, when actually clear, honest conversations up front can turn good friends into reliable long-term allies who make everyone stronger. Balanced bug in host Bailey. This is where the AI kind of screws up. I think I know what it's trying to say. People bugging out to your location is always going to end in disaster or drama. It always, maybe not disaster, but it's always going to end in drama. Like, remember, family are the people that you hate that you just happen to be related to. Like, most people can't even find a spouse that they can get along with half the damn time. Let alone, like, if you work with someone for 8 hours, like, you might be getting along just fine because you're spending another 16 hours not around the person. People can hide who they are for a long time, but not 24 hours a day and not forever. And this may be a little bit nihilistic, but I feel like people are getting worse, not better. People are getting less trustworthy, not more. I think people are having a harder time dating, not an easier time. And people could blame the internet or TikTok or video games or pogo sticks or whatever it is they're going to blame. But people are getting dumber, and they're getting more selfish, and they're getting worse attention spans, and there's less empathy in the world every day that goes by. And I've seen family move in and then just destroy all the trees, and destroy the garden. So if you can't trust your family, then who can you trust? Your friends at work. Everyone at my work turned their back on me that last time. Work swears up and down that they're family, but they're the first person that'll stab you in the back to make it one day longer than you. So you have to kind of bind together on something stronger than that, and that's why I think I would try to bind up with like church people, and try to make friends at church and hope that they're not being a bunch of fake Christians than it being people from school or people from work. Or if you're in the military, that's why a lot of military people just bind up with their military buddies, because you've already been in the shit together. But most normal, not unless you're like firefighters, EMTs, police or something, like, you haven't been in the shit with people that much. You have to be able to trust people on multiple levels, not just the safety of yourself and your spouse and your kids, but your stuff, firearms, food. Not destroying everything because they think they have a better way. A lot of communication. So no, there's going to be a lot of drama. Handling conflict is going to be the number one thing that gets you through this, because nerves are going to fray. People are going to get tired. People are going to be malnourished. People are going to get sick. And you got to know that if you send your brother out on a hunting trip with their brother, that both of those people are going to come back, and it's not going to be a one-way hunting trip for one of them, and you're never going to know the truth. Like, that stuff, like, burrows into your brain big time, and it's tough. Like, and kind of if you go into this with the fact that, like, okay, we made it another day, and probably none of us are going to make it, but at least we made it another day, and get everyone to the dinner table and pray and talk about how things went, and using proper phrasing of statements, there's a good chance you can make it a long time. But, like, going back to what I said before, rooting it in Christianity is going to be really helpful. But giving everyone their own space is going to be really helpful, and make sure people don't have a lot of idle time where they can be nitpicking each other, keeping an eye out for perverts and all the other things that can screw everything up. Making sure everyone has, good enough intentions to where they're not, like, people aren't, like, stealing. Like, it's tough. Humans are imperfect. Like, we're born and bred for drama. But it doesn't have to be that way. But everyone has to work together, I guess. You have to all be on the same page, and everyone's got to have their own spot, and realize there's sometimes two different ways to do things, and either way is okay. And try to keep everyone safe and not hurting, getting hurt. Stuff. Keeping their boots ready to go, and keeping their socks ready to go, and not diminishing the work that people are doing. Like, people are going to do stuff that's more visible, and other people are going to do stuff that's kind of the glue holding everything together, and you got to be able to value all of it. But also, you can't have someone doing 80% of the work, and then someone comes in and does the visible part and gets all the recognition for it. Like, handling recognition is really hard too. It's all, it takes work. And you gotta have counselors, and you gotta have mentors, and anyway, balanced bug and host Bailey. I hope this was a good one. This was kind of like a harder topic than I thought it would be, but yeah, anyway, got a couple more of these plans, so let me know down in the comments, and there's still time, so we'll get through this together. Bye-bye.
Ready to take charge, turning bolts and bars, fixing battle scars, armor plates on the side, guns mounted up high, in the desert it will glide, my battle wagon we will ride. Fight the tyranny, freedom's cavalry, this old truck will be our symbol of liberty. Engine roar like a beast, from the west to the east, through the dust we press, never gonna rest. Wheels crush the sand, weapons in our hands, against oppression we stand, in freedom's mountain lands. tyranny, freedom's cavalry. This old truck will be our symbol of liberty. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Wheels crush the sand, weapons in our hands. Against oppression we stand in freedom's mountain lands. Fight the tyranny, freedom's cavalry. This old truck will be our symbol of liberty. Ride with my dog and gun rack, missiles mounted firmly in the back. Press forward, technicals attack, Toyota Hilux taking our country back. Yeah. Oh, wow. Jump on in this room for your backpack. Press forward, Hilux dotted flag. Old flatbed has an arsenal stack. America taking her country back.